Alternative ending: reincarnation of the strongest sword god. Chapter 41. Its name is Zero Wing. Yelan, should we inform Elder Heart now? If Black Flame is from that side, I'm afraid we won't have the qualifications to handle this matter, Lin Yayu said, reminding her friend, who was still in a daze, of the severity of the situation. If the man known as Black Flame really came from that side, his value would be unimaginable. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that matters involving him were already outside their authority. According to the information they got from Mysterious Moon, the overall standard of Outer World players was generally stronger than the players in their god's domain. In addition, these Outer World players also surpassed them in terms of training efficiency by a large margin. If they could join forces with an Outer World power, they might be able to raise the strength of their guild members by a large margin. It might even be possible to instantly elevate the guild's rank by one whole level. However, this still wasn't the most important point. Rather than training methods, what was crucial to the various powers of their god's domain was the outer world's material resources. According to investigative reports, outer worlds had many precious resources not available in their god's domain. While these resources were deemed worthless by these outer worlds, they would become incredibly valuable when put in their god's domain. Some of these resources could even provide players with significant help in improving their personal strength. Meanwhile, seeing how abnormally strong Black Flame was, there was no way he would be a nobody in the outer world he came from. He might even have a massive power backing him. If this was the case, the person known as Black Flame was no different than a mountain of endless treasures to them. All forces in God's domain would go crazy for him. It should be known that even after the world passage had opened, players still couldn't freely travel between the two linked worlds of God's domain. Setting aside the various travel restrictions, just the resistance put up by the local powers would become a huge limiting factor. After all, none of the two worlds' local powers would casually allow outsiders from entering their world and plundering the resources there. It was only natural that they would desperately fight to control the world passage and protect their resources. Seeing that Black Flame had managed to appear in the miniature ancient world despite this fact, it proved that Black Flame must have a secret path that allowed him to travel between different worlds of God's domain. Meanwhile, the value of such a secret path went without saying. However, Mysterious Moon wasn't the only guild that had discovered this matter thus far. There was also the Star Alliance, a guild which was stronger than Mysterious Moon. If they handled this situation poorly, they would become the sinners of Mysterious Moon. No wonder he is using starter's equipment even though he has such astonishing skills. So this is the reason why. At this time, Zhou Yalan also came back to her senses. When she remembered the scene when she first saw Shi Feng, she felt that she had finally strung things together. Then, she nodded and said, "You're right. Although we still can't be sure if Black Flame is someone from that side, Guild Leader Galaxy's insight and experience make it unlikely that he will be wrong. I'll log off now and contact Elder Heart and the others. Before that, you must find a way to fight for this opportunity, Yayu." After saying so, Zhou Yalan promptly logged out of the game, not daring to waste even a moment. In the meantime, Lin Yayu took a deep breath to calm her frantic heart. Then, she quickly walked up to Shi Feng. Meanwhile, Shi Feng was a little surprised by Galaxy Past's inquiry. He didn't think Galaxy Past would mistake him for a player from another god's domain. However, it made sense after he thought about it. A nameless expert wearing starter's equipment had defeated a highly celebrated apex expert in God's domain. No matter how one thought about it, there was no way such a situation could happen. Unless, of course, this nameless expert didn't originate from this world. After letting out a sigh, Shi Feng looked at Galaxy Past and said, "With the current situation, I doubt you'll believe me even if I deny it, right? You jest. I'm sure an expert like you is a man of your word. Moreover, you don't need to lie to me, right?" Galaxy Past said, smiling. However, even though he spoke as if he would believe Shi Feng regardless of Shi Feng's answer. The confidence and determination in his eyes said otherwise. Seeing the look of determination on Galaxy Past's face, Shi Feng helplessly nodded and said quietly, "Okay, I admit that I am not from this world." It was pointless for Shi Feng to explain himself and clear up Galaxy Past's misunderstanding. Rather than waste his time on such a futile effort, he might as well keep up the misunderstanding and make the best of the situation. Shi Feng was well aware that a solo player couldn't progress far in God's domain. If a player wished to climb to great heights, they would need the support of an organization. Even he, a former Tier 6 sword god, was no exception. Originally, Shi Feng had planned to develop his own force after he had developed his strength and foundation a little more. Now, though, he could just skip this process. Meanwhile, Lin Yayu, who had just walked over, shuddered upon seeing Shi Feng nodding. "It's actually true?" An inexplicable sense of excitement filled Lin Yayu as she looked at Shi Feng's cloaked figure. However, she maintained a calm expression on her face, pretending as if she found this matter to be insignificant. "I knew you couldn't be bothered to lie to me," Galaxy Past said. He, too, grew a little excited after hearing Shi Feng's affirmation. "I haven't had time to introduce myself before. I am Galaxy Past, the former guild leader of the Star Alliance, a first-rate power in this god's domain. May I know which outer world power you come from, Mr. Black Flame?" "Zero Wing," Shi Feng said, memories of his previous life suddenly surfacing in his mind. Then, after reminiscing for a brief moment, he added, "It's a relatively idle power. However, it is also the strongest power in the god's domain I come from." When talking about Zero Wing, Shi Feng's words exuded the pride and confidence of a superior. The emotions in Shi Feng's voice were so vivid that Galaxy Past could even feel the influence Zero Wing held in the god's domain Shi Feng originated from. The strongest power. Meanwhile, after hearing Shi Feng's statement, both Galaxy Past and Lin Yayu were secretly shocked. At the same time, the enthusiasm in their hearts also cooled down a little. Neither of them had thought that Shi Feng would have such a huge origin. Originally, they had wanted to fight for trading rights with Shi Feng by relying on the influence and strength of their respective first-rate guilds. However, all of their previous thoughts had become a joke at this moment. If a guild could call itself the strongest power in a god's domain, one could easily imagine how frightening the strength and influence it held was. It should be known that even if the current 5 great super guilds banded together, they wouldn't dare to call themselves the strongest power in God's domain. Yet, Shi Feng had spoken without hesitation. Through this, they could tell that Zero Wing's strength in Shi Feng's world was undisputed. It was also unlikely that Shi Feng would lie to them. After all, experts were prideful creatures. It was especially true for experts of Shi Feng's caliber. In addition, they were well versed at reading people thanks to their experiences. Meanwhile, they could tell that Shi Feng wasn't lying when he said he came from the strongest power in his god's domain. In that case, how could the strongest power of an entire god's domain possibly put first-rate guilds like the Star Alliance and Mysterious Moon in its eyes? "I know you want to trade with me, or rather, you want to make deals with the power behind me." Shi Feng smiled when he noticed the expressions of the two people before him turning a little ugly. "Unfortunately, the guilds behind you do not have such qualifications. Even so, there's no need for you to be discouraged. Although the guilds behind you aren't qualified to be equal trading partners, your guilds have the chance to become an affiliated power. May I know if you two are interested?" Chapter 42 Zero Wings Foundation? An affiliated power. Galaxy Past and Lin Yayu were stunned when they heard Shi Feng's words. Then, complicated emotions appeared on their faces. If the person saying these words to them wasn't Shi Feng, the representative of Zero Wing, but a representative of some other superpower instead, their answers would have told this person to get lost without hesitation. Although there were many first-rate guilds in God's domain, it didn't mean that they were weaklings. A typical first-rate guild would have control over 100 major cities or more. Top-tier first-rate guilds would even have control over an entire medium-sized kingdom. Hence, first-rate guilds were by no means pushovers. It was especially true for their two guilds. They were confident that their respective guilds could become a super first-rate guild and join the ranks of God's domain superpowers in the future. At that time, apart from the 5 great super guilds, there would be no other existence that their two guilds would be afraid of offending. Thus, asking their two guilds to become affiliated powers was nothing but a joke. After pondering in silence for a moment, Lin Yayu took a deep breath and said in a neutral tone, "I'm afraid I do not have the authority to give you an answer right now, Mr. Black Flame. I will have to discuss your offer with my superiors first. I'm afraid I will also have to discuss it over with my guild's current guild leader," Galaxy Past said, nodding in agreement with Lin Yayu. "Do you think that my condition is a little too brazen?" Shi Feng wasn't surprised when he heard Galaxy Past and Lin Yayu rejecting his offer. Chuckling, he said, "Don't be so quick to shoot down my offer. I understand the pride you have for your respective guilds. After all, a first-rate guild is only one step away from joining the ranks of superpowers. I'm guessing that your respective guilds aren't even afraid of ordinary superpowers right now, much less becoming an affiliated power to one." Galaxy Past and Lin Yayu remained silent as they looked at Shi Feng, evidently agreeing with what Shi Feng had just said. "Since you wish to consider, take your time doing so," Shi Feng said. "However, before that, I plan to show you Zero Wing's foundations. How about making a decision after that? May I know how you plan to display it, Mr. Black Flame?" Galaxy Past asked curiously. Lin Yayu also nodded her head, her eyes looking at Shi Feng with curiosity. There was no way any of their guilds would willingly become an affiliated power without something to convince them. Though, even if Shi Feng did show them Zero Wing's might, their two guilds would most likely still reject his offer. After all, their two guilds possessed great ambitions for the future. How could they possibly submit themselves to another power just for some small profits? However, it'd be a lie if they said that they weren't curious about how powerful outer world powers were. After thinking for a moment, Shi Feng said, "How about we raid this team dungeon together?" "Raid this team dungeon? Does that mean you plan on having your guild's other experts come over?" Galaxy Past's eyes brightened. The strength of a power relied heavily on the number and quality of the experts it possessed. If he could use this opportunity to see the number and quality of experts Zero Wing possessed, he could make a rough guess of Zero Wing's strength. "No, it'll be just me," Shi Feng said, shaking his head. "Only one person?" Lin Yayu was stunned. She failed to understand Shi Feng's intentions. "How will you display Zero Wing's strength, then? A power's foundation couldn't be composed of just one expert. Even if a guild had a Tier 6 God-ranked expert leading it, it would simply be evaluated as a top-tier first-rate guild in God's domain. I'll show it through our mana technique," Shi Feng said with a faint smile. Mana technique? Lin Yayu grew even more confused. Any expert at Tier 4 or above would come into contact with mana techniques. It was because mana techniques were a form of manipulating mana, just like how combat techniques were a form of manipulating the physical body. Meanwhile, after reaching Tier 4, players would need to learn a lot about mana usage, since only by doing so could they display the power of Tier 4 skills and spells. Hence, so long as players reached Tier 4, they would have to touch upon knowledge of this aspect even if they didn't want to. Meanwhile, mana techniques were the best tools for learning how to manipulate mana. However, while mana techniques might be rare in God's domain, their rarity hadn't reached a point where they could be considered priceless. Even first-rate powers would have a few mana techniques in their possession, let alone superpowers. Thus, mana techniques couldn't be used to prove a guild's strength. "You'll understand once we reach the boss," Shi Feng said, not bothering to explain himself. "What do you two think?" "The Star Alliance has no problem with this arrangement," Galaxy Past said nonchalantly. Since he had already lost the challenge, the Star Alliance naturally wouldn't have anything to do with this Hell Mode Team Dungeon any longer. However, while he couldn't acquire the items inside the Team Dungeon, getting the opportunity to understand an outer world expert wasn't a bad idea, either. After all, the current powers of God's domain had incredibly little information on outer world players. Mysterious Moon doesn't have any problem with this arrangement, either, Lin Yayu said, nodding. Good. We'll form a 1,000 man team and enter right away, then, Shi Feng said. Then, he sent a team invitation to Galaxy Past and Lin Yayu. Meanwhile, neither Galaxy Past nor Lin Yayu had a problem with Shi Feng becoming the leader of the team. After all, they wouldn't have felt reconciled if they had let each other lead the team. Rather than have one of them lead the team and the other feeling unreconciled, they might as well let Shi Feng become the team leader. After joining Shi Feng's team, Galaxy Past and Lin Yayu had their respective team disband and join Shi Feng's team. In less than 10 minutes, a team of 1,000 top-tier experts was formed and ready to enter the Hell Mode Team Dungeon. The inside of the miniature Ancient Worlds Team Dungeons was completely different from that of the Outside Worlds Team Dungeons. The inside of the Team Dungeon was so massive that it looked more like a regional dungeon instead. Moreover, not only were there level 103 to level 105 Great Lord ranked demonic beasts, but there were also plenty of level 105 Grand Lord ranked demonic beasts leading these Great Lords. Even the smallest group of monsters in the Team Dungeon had at least several thousand Great Lords and 50 Grand Lords, while some of the bigger groups had over 100 Grand Lords and a mythic ranked demonic beasts leading them. Rather than a dungeon raid, it felt more like they were fighting on a primordial battlefield instead. Moreover, these demonic beasts behaved more like soldiers than monsters. Not only did they move in unison, but they would also always fight in groups instead of alone. An ordinary Tier 3 expert team would stand no chance against these organized monsters. However, faced against the elites of 2 first-rate guilds, these demonic beasts were still a little lacking. Even the weakest expert on the team was geared in a mix of level 100 dark gold and epic equipment. In addition, there were over a dozen refinement realm experts on the team plus Lin Yayu and Galaxy Past. Lin Yayu was a great mage who had reached the flowing water realm. She was akin to a human-shaped cannon, and she could instantly cast Tier 3 AoE spells one after another. As for Galaxy Past, he was a domain realm berserker. Even when mythic-ranked demonic beasts tried to attack Lin Yayu and stop her rampage, none of them could get close to her because of Galaxy Past. In less than 5 hours, Shi Feng and the others had already successfully arrived at the central castle inside the team dungeon. And here I thought this Hell Mode Team Dungeon was going to be challenging. It seems I overestimated it. That's not true. We already killed 4 mythic monsters on our way here. These mythic monsters could already be regarded as the final boss in other dungeons. Moreover, you shouldn't forget that our team consists of the core experts of 2 first-rate guilds. Any other team would have gotten annihilated several times by now. That's right. Didn't you see Guild Leader Galaxy stopping a level 105 mythic monster all by himself? I doubt you can find another expert with such strength in the miniature ancient world. Everyone was thrilled when they arrived in front of the ancient castle. It also didn't look like they had just experienced a series of tough battles at all, since none of them looked tired. This should be where the legacy is located, right? Everyone's already rested, so should we open the door now? Lin Yayu asked Shi Feng when she saw that everyone was mostly rested. Shi Feng had hardly ever fought on their way here. Apart from when he needed to protect the healers, he spent most of his time commanding the team. Meanwhile, Lin Yayu had to admit that Shi Feng was an incredibly capable commander, his commands maximizing the team's combat power. However, even until now, she had yet to see the foundation Shi Feng had promised to display. Now that they were about to fight the final boss, she couldn't help but wonder what the mana technique Shi Feng mentioned was all about. "All right, open it," Shi Feng said as he stood up from the stone pedestal he sat on. Upon hearing Shi Feng's command, the several dozen berserkers on the team approached the massive stone doors that measured 30 meters in height. Then, they pushed against it with all their might, opening it slowly. When a gap formed between the doors, an ancient aura promptly flooded out of the gap. At the same time, a vast courtyard with a dragon statue in the middle entered everyone's eyes. There were also divine runes engraved across the courtyard ground. Meanwhile, as the doors gradually opened, not only did the runes on the ground light up as if awakened, but the dragon statue in the middle also started to tremble and crack. Then, under everyone's gaze, the statue exploded, and a real dragon appeared in its place. A Tier 4 bronze dragon. How is this possible? Why would a dragon appear in a Hell Mode team dungeon? Everyone was stunned when they looked at the 80-meter-tall bronze dragon. Schwartold, Dragon, Mythic. Level 105. HP. Dragons were the personification of destruction in God's domain. They were also the apex race of God's domain. Even a Tier 3 infant dragon was more than capable of destroying a city by themselves, while a Tier 4 adult dragon could plunge an entire kingdom into despair and possibly even annihilation. Let's retreat quickly, Mr. Black Flame. A Tier 4 dragon isn't something current players can go up against, Lin Yayu hurriedly suggested. Even Tier 5 players would have a headache fighting a Tier 4 dragon, let alone Tier 3 players like themselves. Unless they could get the help of a Tier 5 expert, only death would await them if they tried to challenge Schwartold. A dragon? No, that's not right. After looking at the engravings on the ground, Shi Feng said, while he might be a bona fide Tier 4 dragon, he has already died for quite some time by the looks of it. His body is merely being controlled by the runes on the ground. That should be the case. Galaxy Past agreed with Shi Feng's analysis. If this Hell Mode team dungeon really requires players to fight against a Tier 4 dragon, I doubt there is any team in the current miniature ancient world capable of raiding this dungeon. Looking at the raid environment, I believe we are required to figure out a way to destroy the pillars with engravings located around the battlefield. If we do that, the dragon will probably fall on its own. That is true, but we have to face a Tier 4 dragon as we destroy those pillars. Lin Yayu said, feeling a little exasperated. Even if they had the strength to destroy the pillars, they had to survive the dragon's onslaught before they could do so. However, even if all of them combined their strength, they probably couldn't survive even a hit from the Tier 4 dragon. Indeed. If we cannot face the dragon's attacks, destroying those pillars will be nothing but a dream, Galaxy Past said, nodding in agreement. It seems our only option now is to retreat. Let's leave quickly, then. If the dragon starts attacking us, none of us should think of leaving, Lin Yayu hurriedly said. Hold on a second, Shi Feng suddenly said. Although we have to face a Tier 4 dragon, we are not without a chance. A chance? Looking at Shi Feng in confusion, Lin Yayu asked, what chance? Honestly, Lin Yayu felt reluctant to give up on the raid so easily. After all, this was one of the miniature ancient world's legacies they were talking about. If she could get her hands on it, she might be able to improve herself further. However, no matter how she looked at it, there was simply no way they could go up against a Tier 4 dragon. I'm not sure if I can succeed, but I will only know after I try. After saying so, Shi Feng took a step forward, instantly entering Schwartold's area of influence. Immediately, the bronze dragon stood up from its resting position and swung one of its massive claws at Shi Feng. Is he crazy? Lin Yayu was momentarily dumbfounded by this situation. At this time, even Galaxy Past couldn't help but gape in shock at this scene. He didn't think that Shi Feng meant this when the other party said he would try. Shi Feng had just provoked a Tier 4 dragon. Although it is a little early, I can use this opportunity to test out the effects of this move, Shi Feng thought as he looked at the approaching claw that destabilized the surrounding space. Then, he unsheathed the Winter of Eternal Night, wielded it over his head with both hands, and activated the sword skill Radiant Night, which increased the rank of his attack by 2. Immediately afterward, Shi Feng swung down his sword against the approaching dragon claw. First sword, Light Shadow. Chapter 43 One sword to shake the ages. When Shi Feng swung the winter of eternal night, an illusory sword measuring over a dozen meters long suddenly appeared. Then, the illusory sword created a dark trail in the air as it descended toward the oncoming dragon claw, the constantly extending spatial tier making it seem as if the sky was being cleaved in half. Boom! Accompanied by a deafening boom, spatial cracks appeared all around the courtyard. Immediately afterward, a shockwave spread across the courtyard, the shockwave so strong that everyone standing outside the courtyard's entrance had stumbled backward. Even Galaxy Past, a player as strong as a Tier 4 mythic monster, had to take half a step back before he managed to stabilize his body. Was he not serious during our previous fight? Galaxy Past was shocked when he saw the state of the courtyard. Although Galaxy Past dared not say that he was the strongest Tier 5 player before coming to the miniature ancient world, he still considered himself one of the top-ranking Tier 5 experts in God's domain back then. Now that he had entered the miniature ancient world with the blood dragon set and famed saber ice roar, he felt he should be an invincible existence here. Even if there was someone stronger than him, the gap in strength between them should be limited. An example would be how Shi Feng was only slightly stronger than him even after relying on a powerful bronze combat technique. However, what was up with this situation? Right now, Shi Feng had not only shattered space with one move, but he had even forcibly stopped a Tier 4 dragon's attack. This was no longer at the level of just being slightly stronger. Shi Feng was already standing in a completely different dimension. Is this the mana technique he spoke of? Lin Yeyu was also dumbfounded by this scene. She had seen experts using mana techniques before, and the power of these mana techniques went without saying. The boost in power a mana technique provided could practically rival a Tier 4 berserk skill. However, even the strongest mana technique she knew of could not let a Tier 3 player contend against a Tier 4 dragon. Dragons were existences regarded as invincible among opponents of the same tier. Even domain realm experts would need to have an advantage of at least one tier to go up against a dragon of the same level. Meanwhile, experts capable of going up against dragons of the same tier were regarded as legendary individuals in God's domain. When everyone was in shock, a figure flew out of the shattered space in the courtyard's center and landed around 20 yards away. As expected of a Tier 4 dragon. It still has such power even though it is already dead. Shi Feng revealed a bitter smile as he looked at his trembling hands and humming weapon. It seems this is the limit of this move. Light Shadow was the first of 3 parts of the Holy Annihilation mana technique that the Heavenly Blue Saint Ilyadai was known for. Even though Light Shadow was only the weakest out of the 3 parts, it still surpassed the standard of the mana techniques used by ordinary Tier 6 gods. Not only did one require an extremely powerful physique to use Light Shadow, but one would also need an incredibly high concentration standard. Under normal circumstances, a Tier 3 player should be incapable of executing Light Shadow perfectly. However, thanks to his legendary mana body and Winter of Eternal Night, Shi Feng managed to turn the impossible possible. Unfortunately, even with the complete Light Shadow at his disposal, Shi Feng still didn't have enough strength to go up against a Tier 4 dragon. After only one exchange, not only did he get sent flying, but he had also lost around 1/3 of his HP. In other words, he would be killed after receiving 3 more normal attacks from Schwartold. Before Shi Feng could finish lamenting his weakness, Schwartold suddenly flapped its wings and soared into the air. Then, it raised its claw once more and started gathering mana around it. Evidently, the bronze dragon planned to use a skill or spell this time instead of a normal attack. Not good. That's the Tier 4 dragon magic, Meteor. Lin Yeyu's complexion paled when she saw the magic arrays forming around Schwartold's claw. Dragon magic was a type of ancient magic that surpassed the magic found in modern God's domain. Under the same tier, the power of dragon magic far surpassed that of ordinary magic. The cast time was also much shorter. Dragon magic was one of the reasons that made dragons invincible among opponents of the same tier. Meanwhile, among Tier 4 dragon magic, Meteor was a large-scale destruction spell capable of obliterating an area of several hundred yards in one hit. It's over, there's no way we can run away in time. How can this be? Everyone's expressions turned ugly when they looked at the bronze dragon in the air. Dragon magic of the destruction variety wasn't just capable of destroying physical objects. After the spell's power reached a certain extent, it could even destroy souls, which also included the souls of players. If they got hit by Schwartold's meteor now, even if their souls didn't get erased, their souls would still enter a heavily injured state. They would most likely be prohibited from logging into God's domain for at least half a month if that happened. If they were still on the main continent, they wouldn't have minded losing half a month's worth of progress. However, now that everyone was desperately fighting for resources in the miniature ancient world, losing half a month's worth of progress would create an insurmountable gap between them and the experts of other guilds. At this time, even Galaxy Past couldn't help but smile bitterly at this situation. He had originally come with the goal of spectating. He didn't think he would end up getting dragged into such a mess. This would become a huge loss for the Star Alliance. However, when everyone was quietly waiting for death to claim them, Shi Feng suddenly shouted in the team chat, saying, "Guild Leader Galaxy, I'll pin down the boss while you figure out a way to destroy those stone pillars." Pin down the boss? Didn't you try that already? Galaxy Past couldn't help but grow confused when he saw Shi Feng suddenly charging at the bronze dragon once more. It was already a miracle that Shi Feng had managed to receive the bronze dragon's normal attack without dying previously. After all, Shi Feng was only geared in starter's equipment right now. There was no way Shi Feng could stand a chance against Tier 4 dragon magic. It should be known that the legendary individuals who had managed to clash against dragons of the same tier had done so while being fully geared in godly equipment. Had they repeated their feats using only secret silver equipment, they would have died 10 times out of 10. Not to mention, Shi Feng was currently one tier lower than the Tier 4 bronze dragon. Only death would await him if he tried to stop the bronze dragon's Tier 4 dragon magic with the move he used before. The move before might not work, but I still have another move I can try, Shi Feng said in a serious tone. However, you need to move quickly. I won't be able to hold it down for very long. He still has another move? Galaxy Past was momentarily stunned. Then, just when he thought of dissuading Shi Feng, he saw Shi Feng leap into the air and stay suspended in mid-air. He's hovering. Isn't the flight ability only available at Tier 4? Could it be a Tier 3 skill or spell? Everyone was once again shocked when they looked at Shi Feng hovering in the air. No, he's using his mana domain to fly. Moreover, it's a complete mana domain. Galaxy Past also felt flabbergasted by this situation. Is he really human? How can he already use a complete mana domain at Tier 3? An epic mana body. Does he have an epic mana body? Lin Yayu couldn't help but rub her eyes and wonder if she was dreaming when she saw Shi Feng flying. Unlike ordinary expert players, she knew that players would need to fulfill one condition if they wished to use a complete mana domain at Tier 3, and that was to have an epic mana body. Something that even Tier 6 god-ranked experts dreamed of obtaining. Roar! When everyone was in shock, Schwartold let loose an angry roar, seemingly dissatisfied with Shi Feng standing at the same height as him. In the blink of an eye, the magic arrays surrounding his claw finished forming, and he promptly smashed his claw down at Shi Feng. Come! Seeing the descending claw, Shi Feng raised the Winter of Eternal Night once more. This time, though, he got into a stance for a horizontal slash instead of a vertical slash. Immediately afterward, both the mana in the courtyard and the mana in the void started gathering around the Winter of Eternal Night, the speed at which mana gathered dozens of times faster than that of Schwartold's meteor. The mana vortex that formed had even taken on physical properties already. Second sword, Holy Devour. Shi Feng swung his sword, summoning a torrent of blinding flames that brightly illuminated the entire courtyard, the flames devouring even space itself as they made their way toward the oncoming dragon claw. Boom! 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 The collision between the torrent of flames and the dragon claw was akin to a collision between two meteors. Flames instantly flooded the entire courtyard, and the entire sky had transformed into an empty void. Meanwhile, after the flames in the void vanished, the bronze dragon in midair could be seen pushed back by half a step from its original position. Several scales had also fallen off its claw, and dark golden blood could be seen flowing from its wounds. Chapter 44 The Fifth Person. The Dragon's injured. He managed to injure a Tier 4 dragon? Is he even human? Everyone gasped when they saw the dark golden blood flowing down from Schwartold's claw, their minds having a hard time believing this situation. Looking at Shi Feng suspended in mid-air, Lin Yayu couldn't help but ask Galaxy Past, if Black Flame can injure a Tier 4 dragon at Tier 3, he should be on par with those legendary individuals. Right, Guild Leader Galaxy. No, I'm afraid that even those legendary individuals are incapable of accomplishing such a feat, Galaxy Past said, shaking his head after snapping out of his daze. I think only those 4 are capable of doing something like this. Those regarded as legends in God's domain were God-ranked experts who had accomplished many miraculous feats and possessed astonishing battle records. However, Galaxy Past had never heard of anyone ever managing to injure a Tier 4 dragon while they were only at Tier 3. Those 4. When Lin Yayu heard Galaxy Past's analysis, a deep sense of awe and yearning also appeared in her eyes. If one were to try and decide who was the strongest among the many God-ranked experts in God's domain, it would only lead to an endless and inconclusive argument. However, if one were to point out which God-ranked experts shouldn't be provoked at any costs, it would have to be those 4 God-ranked experts. Unlike other God-ranked experts, those 4 were the real deal. They were existences capable of holding their ground against Tier 6 gods all by themselves. The strength of Tier 6 gods was undisputed in God's domain. Even creatures as strong as dragons had no choice but to submit in front of gods. This was because any random god possessed the strength to transcend tiers. They were not existences that ordinary dragons could hope to match. Meanwhile, it was also because of the existence of these 4 god-ranked experts that the 5 great super guilds wouldn't dare to call themselves the strongest even if all 5 of them banded together. Only, this was a secret only known to a small number of people. Typically, only the executives of first-rate powers and superpowers would know about this secret. As for everyone else, they recognized the 5 great super guilds as the strongest powers in God's domain. Now that Shi Feng had displayed strength on par with those 4, Lin Yayu had no choice but to start reconsidering Shi Feng's previous offer. At this moment, though, Shi Feng wasn't faring as well as everyone thought as he faced the bronze dragon before him. Sure enough, Holy Devour isn't something that can be used at Tier 3. I'll be drained of concentration and stamina if I use it a few more times, Shi Feng thought, a bitter smile appearing on his face as he looked at his trembling arm. Originally, Shi Feng had only planned to display light shadows effects to let Galaxy Past and Lin Yayu become aware of the existence of such a special mana usage method. After all, there was a significant difference even among mana techniques. In the case of the average mana technique, it could only increase a player's combat power to a certain extent and help players familiarize themselves with the basic principles of mana. However, in the case of powerful mana techniques, not only could they allow players to transcend tiers, but they could also improve players' control over mana drastically. Meanwhile, even stronger mana techniques would be the ones created by saints. Not only could these mana techniques allow players to thoroughly grasp the basic operating principles of mana, but they could also grant players the opportunity to master a law. The Holy Annihilation mana technique was something the Heavenly Blue Saint had created. Mana techniques of such caliber were extraordinarily rare even among the many worlds of God's domain Shi Feng had visited during his previous life. Meanwhile, so long as players perfectly mastered a mana technique, they could create countless copies of the technique's manual and share it with others, just like combat techniques. Only, achieving perfect mastery over a mana technique was very challenging. Even among Tier 6 God-ranked experts, few could achieve such a feat. However, as luck would have it, Shi Feng had perfectly mastered the Holy Annihilation mana technique. So, he could make as many copies of Holy Annihilation's manual as he wanted. This was also why he was confident in negotiating with the Star Alliance and Mysterious Moon. However, Shi Feng felt that he had just incurred a huge loss. Not only did he fail to let Light Shadow's effects shine, but he had even used Holy Devour, something that he shouldn't be using at Tier 3. To make matters worse, even after using Holy Devour, he had only managed to push back the Bronze Dragon and nothing more. There isn't much time left. It seems I have no choice but to go for broke. After taking a look at Radiant Knight's remaining duration, Shi Feng shouted in the team chat, Guild Leader Galaxy. 10 seconds. I can only hold the boss for 10 seconds. Only 10? Galaxy Past was surprised when he heard Shi Feng's words. He didn't think that Shi Feng could only pin down the Bronze Dragon for such a short time. However, after thinking it over, he felt this was a reasonable outcome. After all, it was already unbelievable that Shi Feng could hold off a Tier 4 dragon for 10 seconds using only starter's equipment. Immediately, Galaxy Past responded, okay. Since that's the case, we'll go all out as well. Destroying all pillars in 10 seconds. How is that even possible? When Lin Yayu looked at the stone pillars located around the courtyard, she couldn't help but feel that the time Shi Feng had given them was too short. There were 3 stone pillars in the courtyard, and every one of them had a magic barrier protecting them. Moreover, based on the structure of the barriers, she could tell that these barriers were created by Tier 4 defensive magic arrays. Attacks under Tier 4 would do little to no effect against them. Moreover, even if their team could launch attacks at the Tier 4 standard, they still needed to deplete the mana reserves of these barriers. In other words, they needed to overcome 3 Tier 4 defensive magic arrays in the short time of 10 seconds. It should be known that even the weakest Tier 4 defensive magic array would need over 100 Tier 4 attacks to deplete. Currently, Galaxy Past was the only person on the team capable of launching Tier 4 attacks. No matter how Lin Yayu looked at it, there was no way Galaxy Past could destroy 3 Tier 4 defensive magic arrays in 10 seconds. Just leave it to us, little girl. Once we start charging for the pillars, all you need to do is dump as many AoE spells on the pillars as you can, Galaxy Past said with a confident smile. Lin Yayu grew even more confused after hearing Galaxy Past's words. She couldn't understand what the other party planned to do. However, she still nodded and said, that won't be a problem. However, AoE spells don't differentiate between friend and foe. Don't blame me if you get hurt. Don't worry. We've long since gotten used to such matters, Galaxy Past said nonchalantly. Then, he looked at the 8 Refinement Realm experts behind him and said, all right, let's begin. Hearing Galaxy Past's words, the 8 Refinement Realm experts from the Star Alliance smiled bitterly. Then, they each took out a blood-red crystal from their bags and started chanting an incantation. As soon as the 8 Refinement Realm experts were done chanting, blood-red magic arrays started appearing around Galaxy Past. Then, a massive amount of mana flooded Galaxy Past's body, causing his aura to increase in intensity rapidly. A battle array. Lin Yayu was dumbfounded when she saw this scene. Battle arrays were incredibly rare in God's domain as they allowed a group of players to share their mana and increase their combat power significantly. However, the various large guilds treated battle arrays as their trump cards. No guild would take out their battle array for use without an important reason. Even though she was a reserve executive of Mysterious Moon, she had never gotten the opportunity to personally see a battle array in action. After all, battle arrays were consumables that would disappear after use. There was no way guilds would use such precious items to raid a dungeon. Before Lin Yayu could recover her senses, Galaxy Past had already transformed into an afterimage as he dashed straight for the nearest stone pillar. His speed was so fast that even Tier 3 experts had a hard time catching him with their eyes. Roar! Meanwhile, the instant Galaxy Past started charging for one of the pillars, the bronze dragon in the air also let loose an angry roar. Evidently, Schwartold had realized Galaxy Past's intentions. Don't even think of getting away from me. However, Shi Feng naturally wouldn't allow Schwartold to interrupt Galaxy Past. Immediately, he sent another Holy Devour smashing into the bronze dragon. Meanwhile, seeing the dazzling torrent of flames appearing once more, Schwartold hurriedly dismissed his thoughts of stopping Galaxy Past and swiped its tail at the flames. It dared not receive the full brunt of Shi Feng's attack with its body at all. Boom! 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 Subsequently, intense shockwaves shook the entire castle, and the space above the courtyard transformed into a dark void. Good! I nearly thought I was a goner. Galaxy Past breathed a deep sigh of relief when he saw Shi Feng successfully stopping the bronze dragon. Then, he promptly started brandishing his saber against the magic barrier in front of him. 1 slash. 2 slashes. 3 slashes. 4 slashes. Advanced combat technique, Sky Breaker. 4 energy blades converged into one before smashing into the magic barrier, the powerful attack instantly reducing the barrier's defensive properties by a large margin. Attack it quickly! Galaxy Past hurriedly shouted upon seeing the magic barrier weakening. Heeding Galaxy Past's command, Lin Yeyu and the other magical class players, who had already finished chanting the incantation for a large-scale combination spell, promptly released their spell at the weakened magic barrier. Boom! After just one hit, the weakened magic barrier started cracking slowly. Then, after this phenomenon continued for 2 seconds, the magic barrier disappeared, and the stone pillar it protected transformed into dust. In the meantime, Galaxy Past had already arrived in front of the second stone pillar and executed another sky breaker against the magic barrier before him. Seeing this, Lin Yeyu started double casting without hesitation and bombarded the weakened magic barrier with a series of spells. 5 seconds later, the second stone pillar also turned to dust. Despicable intruders! You have angered me. Along with the second pillar's destruction, Schwartold's anger also reached its peak. Immediately, he flapped his wings and soared higher into the sky, having no intention of getting entangled with Shi Feng any longer. Then, after putting 100 yards between himself and Shi Feng, he opened his mouth. As soon as the bronze dragon opened his mouth, time in the surrounding area had seemingly stopped for a moment. Then, all mana within the area disappeared into the bronze dragon's mouth, the absence of mana causing everyone to feel uncomfortable and suffocated. Die! The bronze dragon let loose an angry roar. Then, a destructive beam of light that was as bright as the sun shot out of the bronze dragon's mouth. Not good. It's a dragon breath. That's cheating. Why is his dragon breath's preparation time so short? Everyone fell into despair when they saw the descending beam of light. Dragon breath was the strongest attack a dragon was capable of using. It was stronger than even dragon magic. Meanwhile, the dragon breath used by a Tier 4 dragon could instantly destroy an entire city. It simply wasn't something that a bunch of Tier 3 players could stop. At this time, Shi Feng also wore a grave expression on his face. Immediately, he swung the Winter of Eternal Night horizontally and activated World of Frost. Afterward, with Shi Feng as the center, the temperature within a 500-yard radius instantly plummeted. Then, 9 massive frost swords appeared out of thin air, the presence of these swords causing the surrounding space to tremble. Go! With a pale complexion, Shi Feng manipulated the 9 frost swords and executed light shadow with all 9 of them. He fused a mana technique with a skill. How is this possible? When Lin Yeyu and the others saw Shi Feng using light shadow with all 9 frost swords, they were so shocked that they had even forgotten about their fear of the oncoming dragon breath. It was common knowledge that mana techniques were special means of manipulating mana. In essence, mana techniques were the same as skills and spells. The only difference was that mana techniques did not rely on magic arrays to take form. Hence, it should be impossible to use mana techniques in conjunction with skills and spells. At most, players could mana techniques with support skills and spells that buffed their combat performance indirectly. Yet, now, Shi Feng was using mana to manipulate mana, achieving a true fusion between mana technique and skill. Boom! 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 A series of explosions rang out in the sky as the frost swords clashed with the dragon breath one after another. Meanwhile, along with the destruction of each frost sword, the power of Schwartold's dragon breath also grew weaker and weaker. By the time the seventh frost sword had disappeared, Schwartold's dragon breath had also faded out of existence. At the same time as Shi Feng successfully stopped the dragon breath, Galaxy passed and the others had also destroyed the last stone pillar, which, in turn, caused the bronze dragon in the sky to transform into dust with a reluctant expression. Chapter 45 Dragon's Loot. We did it! We won! Everyone cheered out loud when they saw the bronze dragon disappearing. Although everyone present had raided many Hell Mode team dungeons in the past, this was undoubtedly the first time they raided one with a Tier 4 dragon guarding it. Moreover, they had done so while still being at Tier 3 only. This was a feat that could go down in the annals of God's domain. While everyone was celebrating in joy and excitement, the sound of a system notification entered their ears. System, congratulations! You are the first team to have raided the Hell Mode team dungeon Sleeping Dragon's Castle. 100 Flow City Reputation plus 100, Level plus 1, Legacy Skill Point plus 5. What abundant rewards! As expected of the miniature ancient world. I can't believe it gave us a whole level. It would be great if we can get a few more of these rewards. 100 City Reputation Points. With this many points, we can already start accepting city quests from the Adventurers Association. Everyone was flabbergasted by the abundant first clear reward. It was especially true for the Star Alliance's members. This was a pleasant surprise to all of them. Setting aside the EXP they gained, just the 5 legacy skill points reward was already more than enough to make the time they spent here worthwhile. In God's domain, players could only learn their respective classes' legacy skills through spending legacy skill points. However, obtaining legacy skill points outside of the leveling up was incredibly difficult. Typically, only epic quests would award legacy skill points. Even then, players could only get 3 to 5 points per quest. For experts of their caliber, the value of legacy skill points far surpassed that of top-tier weapons and equipment. Now that everyone on the team had received 5 legacy skill points, it was as if everyone had just completed an epic quest. The first clear reward was truly generous. However, after a moment of excitement, everyone quickly had their attention drawn toward the rain of light that had appeared after the bronze dragon's death. When the bundles of light landed on the ground one after another, they transformed into glittering items and quickly formed a small mountain. Eventually, when the rain of light ended and 2 stone tablets radiating a dark purple glow appeared, both the Star Alliance's and Mysterious Moon's members couldn't help but gulp. Crap! Are you kidding me? This is insane! 2 ancient legacies. Moreover, both are peak legacies. Mysterious Moon really lucked out this time. They might even get 2 apex combatants thanks to these legacies. At this moment, even Galaxy Past, who was originally behaving indifferently toward the bronze dragon's loot, couldn't help but grow envious when he saw the 2 peak legacies hovering in the air. If players wished to have a better future in God's domain, they would have to climb to higher tiers. Meanwhile, the best way to improve one's tier was to obtain a hidden class. While it was true that hidden classes tended to increase the difficulty of leveling up and getting promoted to higher tiers, the difficulty increase was negligible compared to the boost in combat power and knowledge players could obtain. Players would still have a net positive gain after obtaining a hidden class. According to the statistics players in God's domain had made throughout the years, even a basic class legacy could increase an expert player's chances of reaching Tier 4 by 10%, while an advanced legacy provided a 30% increase, and a peak legacy provided a 50% increase. In the case of peak legacies, they could even increase players' chances of reaching Tier 5 by roughly 10%. While 10% might not seem like much, it should be known that Tier 4 experts would have to go to hell and back to even increase their chances of reaching Tier 5 by 1%. An increase of 10% would require a Tier 4 player to experience numerous fortuitous opportunities to obtain. We hit the jackpot. 2 peak legacies. With this, Vice Commander Sky and Vice Commander Nightingale will have a chance at reaching Tier 5. What do you mean they have a chance? The 2 Vice Commanders already had a huge chance at reaching Tier 5 originally. If they receive a peak legacy on top of that, it's almost guaranteed that they'll reach Tier 5. If we gain 2 more Tier 5 experts, our guild will instantly enter the ranks of top-tier first-rate guilds. Mysterious Moon's members grew ecstatic as they looked at the 2 stone tablets floating in the air. The strength of a guild depended on the number of experts it possessed. In the case of first-rate guilds, their strength was determined based on the number of Tier 5 experts they possessed. Meanwhile, if a first-rate guild possessed 10 Tier 5 experts, it would be categorized as a top-tier first-rate guild. Of course, if a first-rate guild had 1 Tier 6 God-ranked expert, it could similarly be categorized as such. Previously, Mysterious Moon had always been stuck at just 9 Tier 5 experts. Hence, it could never enter the ranks of top-tier first-rate guilds. Now that Mysterious Moon had acquired 2 peak legacies, it was almost certain that Mysterious Moon would become a top-tier first-rate guild in the future. However, during the time Mysterious Moon's members were celebrating joyfully, Lin Yayu suddenly approached Shi Feng and took a deep breath, saying, "Mr. Black Flame, although you have previously told Nightingale that you don't need any legacies, a peak legacy is far more valuable than the average legacy. I believe you will need it as well. However, may I ask if you can let Mysterious Moon have both of them? Mysterious Moon is willing to pay you the appropriate price." Upon hearing Lin Yayu's words, Mysterious Moon's members instantly fell silent. Then, they turned to look at Shi Feng, their hearts palpitating anxiously. Peak-class legacies possessed extraordinary value in God's domain. When confronted with 2 peak legacies, even super guilds would break their promises without hesitation, let alone an outer world player power. If the person they were dealing with was an ordinary expert, they wouldn't have bothered negotiating at all. They would have simply gone along with their previous agreement and taken the 2 peak legacies for themselves. However, the person they currently faced was Shi Feng, an existence capable of contending against a Tier 4 bronze dragon at Tier 3. Shi Feng could decide their life and death with nothing more than a thought. Not to mention, the Star Alliance was also present. So long as Shi Feng gave the word, the Star Alliance would probably be willing to work for him and split the loot with him so long as he gave the word. What a smart little girl! No wonder OL Confused Heart has so many praises for her and the other girl. Galaxy's smile secretly revealed a bitter smile as he watched Lin Yayu calmly negotiating with Shi Feng. If it weren't for Shi Feng's presence, Galaxy Past wouldn't be polite with Mysterious Moon at all. As for their previous agreement, that was nothing but a joke. In God's domain, strength was everything. Even super guilds would be tempted by the prospect of gaining 2 Tier 5 players, let alone first-rate guilds like the Star Alliance. However, unbeknownst to Galaxy Past, Lin Yayu wasn't as calm as she showed herself to be. On the contrary, her heart started beating rapidly in fear as soon as she finished speaking. She was very much afraid that Shi Feng would refuse her offer. "You don't have to test me, Miss Clear Sky," Shi Feng said as he looked at Lin Yayu. Then, in a contemptuous tone, he continued, "A promise is a promise. It is just 2 peak legacies. Zero Wing isn't so desperate to renege on a promise for this bit of resources." This bit of resources? Lin Yayu was rendered speechless when she heard Shi Feng's contemptuous words. Even if Shi Feng was a legendary expert, she still felt that Shi Feng was being too boastful in his words. At this time, even Galaxy Past, who was watching from nearby, was at a loss for words. A peak legacy was essentially a shortcut to reaching Tier 5. Even if Zero Wing was as powerful as Shi Feng said it was, there was no way it could ignore 2 peak legacies. After all, reaching Tier 6 was incredibly challenging in God's domain. Luck and strength were both needed in abundance, and it was no longer a goal that could be reached simply by dumping a ton of resources. Hence, Tier 5 players were considered the main fighting force of the various superpowers. Don't believe me? After taking a look at Lin Yayu and Galaxy Past, Shi Feng took out several memory crystals that could be bought from any NPC grocery store and said, I believe you must have seen the mana technique I used before, right? Lin Yayu and Galaxy Past silently nodded in agreement. The sight of a Tier 3 player repulsing a Tier 4 dragon without relying on external strength was something they could never forget even if they wanted to. Shi Feng's usage of mana was simply brilliant. Seeing the look of fascination on Lin Yayu and Galaxy Past's faces, Shi Feng fiddled with the memory crystals in his right hand and said slowly, the complete guide to the mana technique you just saw is recorded inside these memory crystals. Chapter 46 Zero Wing's Initial Establishment. The mana technique just now is recorded inside this memory crystal. As soon as Shi Feng finished speaking, Lin Yayu and Galaxy Past promptly turned their gazes toward the 5 memory crystals in Shi Feng's hand, their eyes filled with shock and burning desire. The tier progression in God's domain was brutal. The higher one reached, the more difficult it would be to make further progress. It was especially true for players seeking to reach Tier 5 and beyond. They would have to develop their physique and control over mana to an extremely high standard. Meanwhile, between peak legacies and mana techniques, peak legacies served mainly to improve a player's physique, whereas mana techniques served to improve a player's control over mana. Both were essential for players seeking to ascend to higher tiers. However, the mana technique Shi Feng had previously displayed was unprecedented. It wouldn't even be an overstatement to say that the mana control he exhibited was at a divine level. If they could master such a mana technique, let alone reaching Tier 5, even reaching Tier 6 might not be a problem. In comparison, a peak legacy's value paled significantly. After all, a peak legacy provided almost no help to players in getting promoted to Tier 6. These things should be enough to prove my point, right? Shi Feng said, a faint smile appearing on his face as he looked at Lin Yayu's and Galaxy Past's expressions. Just one copy of this mana technique should be worth 4 or 5 peak legacies, right? Indeed, Galaxy Past said, nodding as he walked closer to Shi Feng and Lin Yayu. Then, with overflowing desire in his eyes, he continued, it is just as you say, Mr. Black Flame. Let alone 4 or 5 peak legacies, the various superpowers will probably be willing to trade 10 peak legacies for just one copy of this mana technique. At the end of the day, a peak legacy could only be used to produce a Tier 5 expert. However, the mana technique in Shi Feng's possession could increase a player's chances of reaching Tier 6 significantly. Just this point alone was more than enough to cause all superpowers in God's domain to go crazy for it. After all, the value of a Tier 6 God-ranked expert easily exceeded the total value of 10 Tier 5 experts. Although powers with only one Tier 6 God-ranked expert could only be considered a top-tier first-rate power, it would become a first-rate power that no superpower would dare to provoke. Meanwhile, if a power had 2 Tier 6 God-ranked experts, it would be considered a superpower regardless of the standard of its other members. This showed just how powerful Tier 6 God-ranked experts were. It seems I have indeed been ignorant, Mr. Black Flame, Lin Yayu said as she retracted her gaze from the memory crystals. Then, she looked at Shi Feng and tentatively asked, may I know if you are willing to sell this mana technique, Mr. Black Flame? Compared to a peak legacy, Shi Feng's mana technique would be of much greater help to a magical class player like herself. If she could get her hands on one of those memory crystals, she would have a much easier time progressing on the path of becoming a mage god. If you are willing to sell it, the Star Alliance will pay double of whatever Mysterious Moon offers, Mr. Black Flame. Galaxy Past said without hesitation. He did not hide his desire for the Holy Annihilation Mana technique at all. Guild Leader Galaxy, you. Lin Yayu grew anxious when she heard Galaxy Past's offer. Unlike Galaxy Past, the Star Alliance's former guild leader, she was only a reserve executive of Mysterious Moon. Meanwhile, her desire to obtain the Holy Annihilation Mana technique was for her personal benefit. Mysterious Moon definitely wouldn't be willing to pay too high a price for her. Seeing that the two people before him were about to break into an argument, Shi Feng promptly stored the memory crystals away and said, "You two don't need to argue over it. There is no way I can sell this thing. It's not for sale." Galaxy Past and Lin Yayu were visibly disappointed when they heard Shi Feng's words. However, they felt that it made sense after giving it some thought. Such a precious mana technique could be used as a guild's foundation. How could Shi Feng possibly sell them? It was true that mana techniques were similar to combat techniques in that they could be duplicated infinitely once a player had achieved perfect mastery over them. It was also true that players could benefit massively by selling these duplicates. However, by doing so, players would also be strengthening potential rivals and enemies. They would essentially be putting the cart before the horse. Although I won't be selling this Holy Annihilation Mana technique, that doesn't mean you don't have a chance at obtaining it, Shi Feng said when he saw the crestfallen looks of Lin Yayu and Galaxy Past. It simply depends on whether you are interested in my offer. Hearing this, Galaxy Past hurriedly nodded and said, "Of course I am interested. May I know what your offer is, Mr. Black Flame?" Before entering the miniature ancient world, Galaxy Past had been stuck at Tier 5 for many years. Now that there was a chance for him to reach Tier 6, he would be lying if he said he wasn't interested. Meanwhile, Lin Yayu also silently nodded in response to Shi Feng's words. Although her circumstances differed from Galaxy Past, she was well aware of her limits. With her current talent, it'd be challenging for her to even reach Tier 5, let alone Tier 6. However, if she had the Holy Annihilation Mana technique, she was certain she could reach Tier 5 at the very least. Become an outer member of Zero Wing, and you'll have the opportunity to learn the Holy Annihilation Mana technique. Looking at the two people before him, Shi Feng proudly said, "Normally, you two wouldn't have any chances at joining Zero Wing. However, Zero Wing is looking to develop in this world, so it is in need of talents and resources. While you two aren't particularly skilled, you still barely qualify." After thinking about it, Galaxy Past asked, "Do you mean for us to abandon our current guilds and join Zero Wing, Mr. Black Flame?" Hearing this, Lin Yayu also grew a little hesitant. After all, abandoning Mysterious Moon to join an unknown outer world power was simply too big of a risk. No, shaking his head, Shi Feng said, "I previously mentioned that Zero Wing is a rather idle power. It is especially true for outer members. There aren't many restrictions in place for outer members. Becoming an outer member is more like joining an adventurer alliance than joining a guild. Once you two join, you can do whatever you want so long as you don't make an enemy out of Zero Wing. You can also complete orders or tasks issued by Zero Wing to earn points and exchange them for Zero Wing's resources." In the past, after the subworld he operated in gained access to the many worlds of God's domain, the big hots of the various subworlds had used a similar method to form alliances with his subworld's various powers. Compared to taking over other subworlds, this was a much more feasible method for a power to gain access to the resources of other subworlds. Now that the subworld he resided in had yet to gain full access to the many subworlds, he could use this chance to lay a foundation for himself in advance. "If that's the case, I am willing to join," Lin Yayu said without hesitation. "I don't have a problem with it, either," Galaxy Past said, nodding. The two of them definitely couldn't give up their existing guilds to join Zero Wing. However, it was a different story if Shi Feng was only having them join a casual organization as individuals. Such an arrangement was no different than players joining the Adventurers Association. Both sides would only take what they needed from each other. It wouldn't affect their positions in their current guilds. "Good." Shi Feng nodded slightly. Then, he took out 2 magic contracts he had prepared beforehand and handed them to Lin Yayu and Galaxy Past, saying, "Sign it if you two don't have any problems with the contract." Magic contracts were the highest degree of protection in God's domain. It was also the main means the sub-world alliances used to bind their members. Once players signed a magic contract, it didn't matter which sub-world they were in. So long as they went against the contract's terms, the penalty stated on the contract would take effect immediately. Even Tier 6 God-ranked experts couldn't escape the contract's effects. After receiving the magic contract, Galaxy Past and Lin Yayu gave the stated terms a read. The contract was relatively simple. It prohibited them from becoming enemies with Zero Wing and leaking its secrets to players outside the guild. Of the 2 clauses, the second one would remain in effect even after they left or got dismissed from Zero Wing. Meanwhile, they would be prohibited from logging into God's domain forever if they break any of these conditions. After reading the contract's content, Lin Yayu looked at Shi Feng and asked, "Mr. Black Flame, am I allowed to invite others to join after entering Zero Wing?" Chapter 47 Zero Wing's Membership Slots. Upon hearing Lin Yayu's question, Galaxy Past couldn't help but turn his gaze to Shi Feng. He, too, was concerned about this issue. While Galaxy Past might not know how strong Zero Wing was exactly, he had seen Shi Feng's prowess with his own 2 eyes. 1 sword to shake a dragon. This was a frightening battle record that only 4 other people could accomplish in God's domain. Meanwhile, every one of these 4 people was an existence the various super guilds feared. Just this point alone was more than enough reason for him to join Zero Wing's alliance. Not to mention, there was even the benefit of being able to exchange for the Holy Annihilation Mana technique. If he could get a bunch of his companions to join Zero Wing, it would become a lot easier to accumulate contributions in Zero Wing. 1. Seeing the expectant gazes the 2 people were giving him, Shi Feng slowly said, "Each of you will have only 1 invitation slot. Moreover, the people you invite must be at the refinement realm at the very least. If the invited player wishes to have an invitation slot, they need to reach the flowing water realm first. Depending on the combat standards of the invited players, you will also receive a corresponding amount of points. Zero Wing's points will follow the value of God's domain's coins, with 1 point equaling 1 gold coin. You will receive 1,000 points for Refinement Realm experts, 3,000 points for Flowing Water Realm experts, and 10,000 points for Void Realm experts. If you manage to invite a Domain Realm expert, not only will you receive 50,000 points, but you will also receive an additional invitation slot. If you yourself reach the Domain Realm, you will also receive an additional invitation slot." Originally, Shi Feng had planned to have Lin Yayu and Galaxy Past invite as many people as possible so that Zero Wing could grow strong quickly. However, rapid development would only lead to Zero Wing's early destruction with his current strength and resources. Moreover, after experiencing the world after the many sub-worlds of God's domain gained free access to each other, he knew that numbers would only be important during the early phase. Later down the line, it was quality that mattered. Hence, Shi Feng planned to raise his requirements this time and develop Zero Wing into a true alliance of experts. He would develop Zero Wing into an organization similar to Demon's Gate, an assassin organization feared by even the big hots of the various sub-worlds. Part of the reason why Demon's Gate was feared was because it had 9 experts with the strength to solo kill Tier 6 gods. However, what made the various big hots truly fear Demon's Gate was when the organization had destroyed an entire sub-world. Back then, news of the matter had shaken the many sub-worlds, and Demon's Gate's existence instantly became taboo among the many sub-worlds. Nobody dared to offend Demon's Gate even at the slightest. 1 point equals 1 gold coin? That's a generous invitation bonus, Galaxy Past muttered in surprise. Then, in a disappointed tone, he continued, "But I'd rather have a smaller reward and more invitation slots instead." Lin Yayu also nodded slightly when she heard Galaxy Past's mutterings. Receiving 1,000 gold's worth of Zero Wing points just for recruiting a Refinement Realm expert was certainly a generous reward. After all, At the current market rate, 1,000 gold was worth 100,000 credits. That was already enough money to cover an ordinary family's living expenses for a year. Not to mention, after the miniature ancient world was released, the price of coins was continuously rising. In the miniature ancient world, where using low-quality equipment was out of the question, players could get a relatively good level 100 epic weapon with 1,000 gold. That would increase an expert player's strength significantly. However, for executives of first-rate guilds like themselves, Zero Wing's invitation slots were much more important than the invitation rewards. If there wasn't an invitation limit, they could invite many experts and companions to join them in completing Zero Wing's tasks and acquiring points. They would also have an easier time communicating with their allies. After all, Zero Wing's contract explicitly prohibited them from sharing Zero Wing's secrets with outsiders. Now that they could only invite one player each, they would have to carefully consider whom to use their invitation slot on. By their most conservative estimates, a mana technique as powerful as the Holy Annihilation technique should be worth 50 million points at the very least. After all, a peak legacy typically sold for 10 million gold on the main continent, which was already enough to empty the working capital of an ordinary first-rate guild. Meanwhile, 50 million gold was an astronomical sum that neither the Star Alliance nor Mysterious Moon possessed. The only fortunate matter was that they could exchange for the Holy Annihilation technique as soon as they had enough Zero Wing points. In comparison, they wouldn't be able to purchase a peak legacy even if they had the money to do so. If you want to acquire more invitation slots, you will have to think of ways to improve yourselves, Shi Feng said, a faint smile appearing on his face when he saw the bitter faces on Galaxy Past and Lin Yayu. Now that you've signed the contract, if you wish to acquire points, exchange for resources, or invite your companions into the guild, you can do so at 100 Flow City's Candlelight Hotel. However, I advise you to consider who you use your invitation slot on since points won't be so easy to come by. With that said, I will be taking my leave now. After saying so, Shi Feng extended his arms in the direction of Schwartold's loot. Immediately afterward, 3 items radiating a purplish golden hue flew into Shi Feng's hand. At a glance, anyone could tell that these 3 items were extraordinary. Their value was most likely second to only the peak legacies dropped. However, nobody present had any qualms with Shi Feng claiming these 3 items. On the contrary, they felt that it was only right that he did so. After all, a God-ranked expert's service wasn't something one could normally buy with just 3 items from a Tier 4 dragon's loot. After obtaining the 3 items, Shi Feng took out a return scroll for 100 Flow City and activated it, showing no intentions of staying for even a moment longer. He left already. Lin Yayu couldn't help but feel a little disappointed when she saw Shi Feng disappearing from the dungeon. She would benefit immensely if she could receive even a little bit of guidance from a God-ranked expert. The progress she could make wouldn't be something she could achieve with just hard work alone. Do you really think God-ranked experts have a lot of time on their hands? Galaxy Past said, rolling his eyes at Lin Yayu. Experts of their caliber have many things they need to consider and deal with. The volume of work they have on their plates is not something we can hope to imagine. The fact that a God-ranked expert is willing to spend so much time talking to us can already be considered a rare opportunity, so stop being greedy. Right now, what you should be thinking of is who you are going to invite. Thanks to his many interactions with Purple Eye, who was now a Tier 6 God-ranked expert, Galaxy Past knew exactly how busy a Tier 6 God-ranked expert was. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that even a second of their time was incredibly precious. The reason was that players would get to touch upon some of the true secrets of God's domain after reaching Tier 6. Meanwhile, the things they did and the considerations they had to make were no longer restricted to only the world they lived in. Instead, their focus was on a much wider world. However, what Galaxy Past did not know was that Shi Feng's swift departure wasn't due to any of the reasons he assumed. Instead, Shi Feng had left because he had exhausted both his stamina and concentration after overusing Holy Devour, and he was in urgent need of rest. Meanwhile, after hearing Galaxy Past's reminder, Lin Yayu quickly decided who she should invite. Obtaining 0 wing points, is it? I should discuss it properly with Yelan. Lin Yayu didn't intend on notifying the guild regarding 0 wing's invitation this time. Instead, she planned to tell only Zhou Yelan and have her friend join 0 wing secretly. After all, Shi Feng had only mentioned 0 wing's matter to her and Galaxy Past. Everyone else on the team was excluded from the conversation. Meanwhile, after all was said and done, Lin Yayu and Zhou Yelan were only reserve executives in Mysterious Moon. Although they would receive priority for resources in the guild, it didn't mean they would receive the best resources available. Lin Yayu was certain that should she tell this matter to the guild leader or elder Confused Heart, they would undoubtedly take her slot away. Once that happened, it would take ages before she could earn another slot to invite Zhou Yelan into 0 wing. Subsequently, after the Star Alliance's and Mysterious Moon's members disbanded the team and left the dungeon, Galaxy Past chose to log out of the game immediately. This trip to the miniature ancient world wasn't a waste after all. If I have this mana technique, I'm sure my strength will rise to the next level. When Galaxy Past stepped out of his virtual gaming cabin and rewatched the footage he recorded of Shi Feng's fight with the bronze dragon, he couldn't help but grow ecstatic. Points. I need to get more points. After rewatching Shi Feng's battle video a few times, Galaxy Past promptly called up his contact list on his quantum watch. Then, he scrolled to the very bottom of the list and clicked on the name he had rarely ever contacted. Although fear briefly appeared in his eyes when he clicked on this name, he eventually chose to call this person still. Since he could gain one additional slot by inviting a domain realm expert, it'd be a waste to invite anyone weaker. Galaxy Past? What's an old man like you calling me for? The lithe figure that appeared above Galaxy Past's quantum watch said, her voice full of contempt. I don't remember us being familiar with each other. It is true that we aren't familiar. However, Miss Soul, I have a proposition that you will definitely be interested in. Galaxy Past said. Even when faced with the other party's arrogance, he did not get angry in the slightest. On the contrary, he met the other party's arrogance with a smile. This was because the other party was Hidden Soul, one of the former commanders of the infamous Flower of Seven Sins. Chapter 48 God's Domain State of Affairs. This place was a vast, blue ocean with nary a cloud in the sky. At this time, a tier in space spanning over 1,000 yards suddenly appeared above the ocean, its appearance kicking up strong winds that disrupted the peace of this place. A moment after the spatial tier formed, 4 figures flew out of it and plopped into the ocean. Their impact on the water generated waves dozens of meters tall, the commotion attracting the attention of the dozen or so ships sailing nearby. The mana here is so thin. The sense of rejection is gone. I think we're back. While standing on the ocean's surface, Lifeless Thorn, Solitary 9, and Yu Luo grew excited when they sensed the familiar low mana environment and the lack of rejection from the world. Although the ancient god's domain had plenty of benefits that the modern god's domain did not possess, they had played in the modern god's domain for most of their career in god's domain. Most of the people and matters they knew of were found here. Naturally, they were glad to return to the modern god's domain. Meanwhile, the appearance of Shi Feng's group also gave the players on the nearby ships a huge shock. Crap! Who are they? How can they stand on water? They should be using some kind of levitating skill. No. If they were using a skill or spell, there should be strong mana fluctuations. But I don't sense any coming from the 4 of them. At this moment, Shi Feng's group of 4 had all their information concealed with their black cloaks, so the surrounding players couldn't uncover any information about them. The only thing the surrounding players were certain of was that the 4 were all players. Knowing this, the surrounding players couldn't help wanting to find out the identity of Shi Feng's group. Let's hurry up and leave, a level 123, Tier 3 ranger driving an advanced speedboat said. The situation in this sea zone has been chaotic recently. We'll be doomed if we get dragged into the war between adventurer teams on Dragonheart Island. indeed. Let's leave this place quickly. Now that such a huge commotion has occurred here, Warbloods members will definitely come over. If they find us here, they might take us for members of other adventurer teams and kill us, the level 122 shield warrior standing beside the ranger youth said, nodding in agreement. While the players on this advanced speedboat were conversing with each other, Shi Feng and his companions, around 100 yards away, heard every word of their conversation. So, this place is near Dragonheart Island. Shi Feng revealed a faint smile. It seems we were lucky. We didn't get teleported to some dangerous and remote location. Space-time teleportation was incredibly random. If they got teleported into a dangerous location, such as a forbidden land or a special location that prevented teleportation, making their way home would be very troublesome. Nodding, Lifeless Thorn said, but based on these people's words, there seems to be quite a struggle occurring on Dragonheart Island. That's normal. With the NPC population growing continuously, the number of NPCs operating at sea would naturally increase. While they might not be as numerous as the landlocked NPCs, they will still outnumber players by a large margin. And with the participation of NPCs, the various powers will definitely struggle even more desperately among themselves for resources, Shi Feng said, unsurprised by Dragonheart Island's current state of affairs. This was because he had received some news from Liang Jing a few days ago. According to her, God's domain was truly messed up right now, and NPC forces had even begun taking action against the guild towns of players. Although the NPC forces did not directly assault guild towns, they still created a lot of trouble inside the guild towns. They forced the guilds running these towns to submit to them and pay a ton of resources and coins and tribute. Otherwise, they would continue their harassment until the guild town imploded. In Shi Feng's previous life, many unrated guilds and third-rate guilds had no choice but to submit to these NPC forces' extortion. After all, if these guilds lacked the income from their guild towns, they would truly be doomed. Now that God's Domain's first major update had arrived ahead of schedule, once the NPCs began taking action with full force, even first-rate guilds and superpowers would have no choice but to pay tribute to the NPC forces to buy time to develop themselves. After all, in God's Domain, players were merely a minority. One could also say that players were outsiders. Apart from immortality, players did not have any advantages over the original inhabitants of God's Domain. God's Domain's inhabitants far outnumbered players when it came to the top combatants both sides possessed. This would remain true even 10 years after God's Domain's launch. Upon hearing Shi Feng's words, a hint of anxiety appeared on Yu Luo's face. Immediately, she took to the skies and flew toward the nearby advanced speedboat, her approach giving the 6 players on the boat a fright. These 6 players stared at Yu Luo with horrified expressions. Their reaction was because the ability to fly freely in the sky was unique to players at Tier 4 or above. Tier 4 players were existences that even NPCs feared. Although there were only a small number of Tier 4 experts in God's Domain, every one of them was a big shot capable of shaking heaven and earth with their every move. These Tier 4 experts were not existences ordinary Tier 3 experts like themselves could meet. "How may I help you, miss?" the Tier 3 ranger serving as the leader of the party asked respectfully as he looked up at Yu Luo. The strong were respected in God's Domain. This fact might not have been evident in the past. However, after experiencing the changes brought by the system's major update and the various NPCs' arrogant behavior, these players thoroughly understood that the world of God's Domain was a much more straightforward and crueler place than the real world. When it came to dealing with Tier 4 powerhouses, if they offended the other party, it wouldn't be strange for them to get annihilated the next second. They also wouldn't be able to do anything about it. "Do you know Heaven's Blade's situation?" Yu Luo asked. Heaven's Blade was her home. Its well-being had also been a concern for her all this time. Before she entered the ancient God's Domain, the competition on Dragonheart Island had already been incredibly intense. Heaven's Blade had even clashed with several of the island's top adventurer teams and suffered casualties numbering in the thousands. This was why she had risked grinding and exploring a dangerous location by herself. Since her disappearance from the modern god's domain until now, a month had gone by. Meanwhile, 1 month was more than enough for the entirety of God's domain to undergo significant changes, let alone a small place like Dragonheart Island. Heaven's Blade. The ranger youth was surprised and confused by Yu Luo's question. What? Have you never heard of Heaven's Blade before? Yu Luo frowned. Or do you not want to say it? As Yu Luo's voice chilled, the Tier 3 shield warrior and the others shuddered involuntarily and looked toward the ranger youth. They didn't know whether they should speak up. Although Yu Luo hadn't revealed any killing intent thus far, her aura alone was already more than enough to instill fear in them. After all, they had personally witnessed just how powerful a Tier 4 player could be. A Tier 4 player could kill hundreds of Tier 3 players with just the flip of a hand. The silence had stretched out for a second when the ranger youth wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead and said hurriedly, "Miss, you misunderstand me. It's not that I refuse to tell you. It's just that this matter is already common knowledge in God's domain. I was just wondering why you would ask such a question, miss. Common knowledge in God's domain." Yu Luo couldn't help feeling a little confused. According to Shi Feng, before his group entered the ancient God's domain, nothing big had happened to Heaven's Blade. It had simply been competing with Dragonheart Island's several top adventurer teams for resources as usual. Shi Feng had left the modern God's domain only a few days ago. Logically, nothing significant should have happened to Heaven's Blade. That's right. This incident caused quite the commotion back then. It affected over a dozen superpowers, the ranger said, nodding. 3 days ago, through some unknown means, not only did Warblood enter into an alliance with one of Dragonheart Island's local NPC forces, but someone from Warblood also got promoted to Tier 4. As a result, Warblood's influence on the island skyrocketed, and even 13 thrones suffered losses at the hands of Warblood. What about Heaven's Blade? Yu Luo asked. Heaven's Blade. The ranger hesitated to answer because he knew that the Tier 4 powerhouse before him was definitely related to Heaven's Blade. After taking a deep breath, he continued, Heaven's Blade disbanded 2 days ago. Disbanded? Yu Luo was stunned. How is this possible? She had developed from the ground up together with Heaven's Blade, and the adventurer team was basically her home. Yet, now, she was being told that Heaven's Blade had disbanded? At this moment, let alone Yu Luo, even Shi Feng was stunned when he overheard the ranger's words from a distance. Heaven's Blade was one of Dragonheart Island's top 5 adventurer teams. Not only did the adventurer team boast close to 10 peak experts under its command, but its commander, Zui, was even one of Dragonheart Island's top 3 MTS. In the past, Zui had also been a legendary figure, and she had developed Heaven's Blade into an overlord-like existence in God's domain. Hence, hearing that Heaven's Blade had actually disbanded now came as a shock to him. If Heaven's Blade disbanded, where did Heaven's Blade's executives go? Suppressing the emotions in her heart and doing her best to stay calm, Yu Luo asked in a quivering voice, where did Commander Zui and the others go? Shaking his head, the ranger replied, this, I do not know. I only know that Heaven's Blade seems to have enraged Warblood. Warblood is still hunting down Heaven's Blade's members even now, going as far as sealing off Dragonheart Island. People on Dragonheart Island can't contact the outside world. Even those seeking to leave Dragonheart Island need to go through Warblood's inspection. If I were to guess, Heaven's Blade's executives have probably left Dragonheart Island and already gone somewhere else to develop. I understand. You may go now. Yu Luo could no longer remain calm after listening to the ranger's words. After waving her hand at the party of 6, indicating that they were free to continue with their business, she turned around and flew back to Shi Feng's group. After hearing Yu Luo's words, the party of 6 felt like death row prisoners who had just been granted amnesty. Hurriedly, they sailed away from the area on their advanced speedboat, not daring to remain for even a moment longer lest Yu Luo change her mind and vent her anger on them. Yu Luo, what do you plan to do now? Shi Feng asked as he took in Yu Luo's downcast expression. According to their original plan, they would go their separate ways after returning to the modern era. However, it turned out that Heaven's Blade had disbanded. And Yu Luo probably couldn't save Heaven's Blade by herself. Me? Shi Feng's question left Yu Luo at a loss. I don't know. The modern god's domain she was familiar with no longer existed, so she didn't know what she should do. Since that's the case, why don't we go take a look at Dragonheart Island for now? Shi Feng suggested. I still have some matters to deal with on Dragonheart Island. Meanwhile, although Heaven's Blade has disbanded, I believe Commanders Wei and Heaven's Blade's other executives wouldn't leave the island so easily. After all, their foundation and all their resources are on Dragonheart Island. It would be difficult for them to decide to change their base of operations within a short period. So, once we reach Dragonheart Island, you might be able to contact them. Yu Luo's eyes immediately glowed at Shi Feng's words. She felt that what he said was indeed true. Heaven's Blade's members had been residing on Dragonheart Island for such a long time now. How could they possibly just pack up and leave? Not to mention, even if Heaven's Blade was no more, she could still contact Commanders Wei and the others. After all, unlike the ancient god's domain, long-range communication between players was possible in the modern god's domain. Okay. I'll follow you, Guild Leader Black Flame. Yu Luo nodded. Afterward, Shi Feng opened a spatial gate and teleported toward Dragonheart Island. Chapter 49 Sin of Pride. After seeing the cloaked woman enter the Candlelight Hotel, the middle-aged man couldn't help but grow worried as he looked at the ordinary-looking hotel before him. Let's hope Mr. Black Flame didn't lie to me. Otherwise, this fierce woman will definitely turn the entire Star Alliance upside down, the middle-aged man prayed before following the cloaked woman into the hotel. If Lin Yeyu was present right now, she would definitely be greatly surprised. This was because the middle-aged man was none other than Galaxy Past, the Star Alliance's former guild leader and a Tier 5 Apex expert during his peak. Yet, as strong as he was, Galaxy Past was actually behaving timidly around a woman. It was simply unbelievable. However, only Galaxy Past knew just how frightening the woman he brought was. She was someone even the various superpowers feared. Hidden Soul. Hidden Soul was a legendary assassin in God's domain. At the same time, she was also one of the former commanders of the Flower of Seven Sins, God's domain's strongest assassination organization. A few years ago, Hidden Soul had killed even the guild leader of a super guild before. Back then, her achievement had shaken the entire God's domain and propelled her to become a legendary individual known by all. Although Hidden Soul had never managed to reach Tier 6 all these years, she was undoubtedly one of the trickiest players to deal with under Tier 6. It was especially true when the battlefield was set in the wilderness. She would become a death god with the cover the wilderness afforded her. In the past, one Tier 6 Berserker god had even publicly expressed that Hidden Soul had nearly assassinated him out in the wild. Hence, even though Hidden Soul was only a Tier 5 player, no Tier 6 god-ranked expert dared to underestimate her. If not for the sake of obtaining 0 wing points and 1 additional invitation slot, Galaxy Past definitely wouldn't have sought the help of Hidden Soul. While Galaxy Past was inwardly praying, he suddenly noticed Hidden Soul stop moving abruptly after entering the hotel. Did something happen? Galaxy Past's heart thumped as he hurriedly stepped forward. The instant Galaxy Past entered the Candlelight Hotel, he immediately felt his body brimming with energy and his mind becoming refreshed. At this moment, he even had the illusion that he had just woken up from a dream. How can the mana here be so dense? Galaxy Past was filled with disbelief when he sensed the near-misty state of the mana in the air. Mana was the foundation of everything in God's domain. It was true that the miniature ancient world's environment rivaled that of ancient times, and the density of the ambient mana here far surpassed that of the main continent. Meanwhile, this mana density would be further amplified under the magic arrays of hotels. However, compared to the environment found in other hotels, the environment in the Candlelight Hotel was on a whole other level. Specifically, there was a qualitative difference between the mana in the Candlelight Hotel and the mana in other hotels. If players trained in such a mana-rich environment, it would help significantly in improving their control over mana. Not only is the mana here dense, but it is also very stable. I can sense the operation of the magical elements much more clearly here, Hidden Soul commented, opening her eyes after carefully analyzing the mana around her. Even those super guilds will have a hard time letting an ordinary hotel gain such a mana-rich environment. It seems you didn't lie to me. Of course. You've seen that battle video for yourself. You should know as well as I do that such an expert has never been seen in our god's domain, Galaxy Past said with a hint of pride. Indeed. Out of the experts I know, none of them resemble him. The attack he used to injure the bronze dragon is especially something. Out of everyone in God's domain, only those 4 could probably accomplish a similar feat. But there is no way those 4 would be so free as to come to this place, Hidden Soul said, nodding. However, she still held a skeptical attitude as she added, but I still don't think that person in the Zero Wing that you spoke of can help me reach Tier 6. Unlike Galaxy Past, Hidden Soul used to be the commander of the Flower of Seven Sins Sin of Pride. She had free access to the Flower of Seven Sins information network, which was only slightly inferior to the Secret Pavilion's information network. She even had the fortune of visiting other gods' domains linked to their god's domain. Thus, the things she knew of far exceeded that of Galaxy Past. The other gods' domains she visited were much stronger than their god's domain. Yet, even the strongest powers in these gods' domains didn't have the foundation necessary to help her reach Tier 6. This was because the cause of her inability to reach Tier 6 was no longer related to her combat standard. Her combat standard had long since surpassed many Tier 6 god-ranked experts. The standard of her mana control was even top tier among Tier 6 god-ranked experts. Even if she were to fight Shi Feng, someone capable of butting heads with a Tier 4 bronze dragon, she was confident she could hold her ground and potentially kill him even. After all, combat with monsters was completely different from combat with other players. Seeing Hidden Soul's confidence, Galaxy Past's confidence also started wavering a little. Even so, he still firmly said, I understand, but isn't that why I called you here to verify it personally? Galaxy Past didn't know exactly how strong the guild known as Zero Wing was. However, judging by the strength Shi Feng had displayed thus far, Zero Wing was definitely stronger than the current 5 great super guilds. After all, Zero Wing could afford to let a god-ranked expert like Shi Feng come to the miniature ancient world to restart his progress. This point alone was more than enough to prove Zero Wing's strength. If a guild wasn't overflowing with Tier 6 god-ranked experts, there'd be no way it would dare let a Tier 6 god-ranked expert retrain his account. Since Zero Wing had so many Tier 6 god-ranked experts, it shouldn't be difficult to help Hidden Soul, whose combat standards surpassed ordinary Tier 6 god-ranked experts, reach Tier 6. Amidst the conversation between Hidden Soul and Galaxy Past, Blakeana approached the two and asked, Welcome to the Candlelight Hotel. May I know if you two need any help? Hello, we wish to meet with Mr. Black Flame. May I know if he is in? Galaxy Past asked, getting straight to the point. All right, please wait for a moment. I will notify the owner of your request, Blakeana said, nodding before contacting Shi Feng. Second floor advanced room. After refining the mana protection crystals for 10 minutes, the 3 crystals gradually disintegrated in the magic array Shi Feng drew and revealed several strands of purple gold blood. Then, as soon as these strands of blood were freed from their containers, they started rapidly absorbing the rich mana in the room, depleting the room of mana in just 3 seconds. Meanwhile, after absorbing all that mana, the purple gold blood radiated an ancient divine might that filled the entire room. Success! Shi Feng grew excited when he looked at the strands of purple gold blood hovering and flowing before him. I can't believe I managed to extract 12 strands of ancient gods' blood from just 3 crystals. Those outer world powers will probably die from envy if they learn of this. While mana protection crystals could be found in the greater gods' domain, every crystal would involve a struggle between a group of Tier 6 god-ranked experts. Some Tier 6 god-ranked experts even sustained severe injuries during these struggles and required astronomical amounts of resources to recover. Hence, one could easily imagine the value of the mana protection crystal. Meanwhile, mana protection crystals typically yielded only 2 strands of ancient gods' blood, with larger ones yielding 3 strands at most. Yet, Shi Feng had extracted 4 strands of blood from each mana protection crystal, netting himself 12 strands in total. Meanwhile, shortly after Shi Feng finished extracting the ancient god's blood, he suddenly received a call from Blakeana. "Owner, 2 people have come to the hotel asking to meet you. They are a man and a woman. Do you want to meet them?" Blakeana asked. "A man and a woman?" Shi Feng quickly stored the ancient god's blood away after hearing this. "Then," he said, "bring them here, then." Shortly afterward, Blakeana knocked on the room's door. "I've brought them here, owner," Blakeana said from outside the door. "You can head back to work. Have them enter on their own," Shi Feng said casually as he tidied up the magic crystal dust and remnant magic materials on the floor. After hearing Shi Feng's words, Blakeana bowed slightly to Galaxy Past and Hidden Soul before returning downstairs by herself. "You want us to enter on our own? Let's see if you are as powerful as Galaxy Past says you are, then." Hidden Soul smirked and unsheathed the tattered short sword she carried on her back when she heard Shi Feng's words. Immediately. Then, she abruptly opened the door and dashed inside, leaving behind an afterimage. Chapter 50 Frightening Zero Wing. Stop! Soul! Galaxy Past panicked when he saw Hidden Soul dashing into the room with her short sword drawn. Although he had long since known that Hidden Soul was a crazy woman, he didn't think that she would try to test Shi Feng's strength as soon as they met. Maniac! Hidden Soul was a true maniac. However, ignoring Galaxy Past's words, Hidden Soul promptly vanished from Galaxy Past's vision and perception. The standard of her footwork and body technique were leagues ahead of Zhou Yalin's. "It's over." Galaxy Past fell into despair when he saw Hidden Soul vanishing. Originally, he had wanted to rely on Hidden Soul to help him earn points at a quicker rate. Yet, now, Hidden Soul had ended up trying to assassinate Shi Feng. There was no way he could salvage the situation now. Hidden Soul was labeled as a death god in God's domain because she could kill almost anyone within 10 steps of her. Even Tier 6 god-ranked experts were at risk of death if they weren't careful. It should be known that there was a gigantic gap in basic attributes between Tier 5 and Tier 6 players. So, it was almost impossible for a Tier 5 player to assassinate a Tier 6 player. Although Hidden Soul had regressed to Tier 3 now, even Tier 4 experts were probably at risk of dying at her blade, let alone Tier 3 experts. Just when Galaxy Past thought that he had ruined his partnership with Zero Wing, he suddenly heard a loud boom coming from inside the room. It sounded like something crashing to the ground. Upon hearing this sound, he hurriedly entered the room with a worried heart. However, as soon as Galaxy Past entered the room, he was instantly dumbfounded. How is this possible? Currently, inside the spacious living room, Galaxy Past saw Shi Feng quietly sitting on the living room sofa while Hidden Soul's body lay paralyzed on the living room carpet. At a glance, it looked like something heavy was pressing down on Hidden Soul's body, and no matter how much she struggled, she couldn't break free from her current state. This outcome far exceeded Galaxy Past's expectations, and his mind had difficulty processing this situation. In a situation where both Hidden Soul and Shi Feng were at Tier 3, not only did Hidden Soul fail to assassinate Shi Feng, but judging by the current situation, it would seem that she didn't even manage to lay a finger on Shi Feng. However, after observing this scene for less than half a second, Galaxy Past suddenly felt an unbearably heavy pressure acting on his body, causing him to instantly collapse to the ground. At the same time, he also felt his mind being assaulted by a frighteningly powerful mental attack. Divine Might. Galaxy Past grew even more shocked after falling to the ground. As a Tier 5 player, he would often come into contact with items belonging to gods. Hence, Divine Might was something he was incredibly familiar with. Yet, the Divine Might he was familiar with felt incredibly foreign right now. Divine Might was usually used to refer to the mental deterrence created by gods. It was something unique to Tier 6 gods, Tier 6 god-ranked experts, and possessions of gods. Meanwhile, the Divine Might that covered the room right now was so terrifyingly powerful that he felt as if a true Tier 6 god was standing before him. Such frightening Divine Might simply wasn't something Tier 3 players could resist. The only thing they could do in this situation was to submit. Even Hidden Soul, someone who had assassinated Tier 6 god-ranked experts before, was no exception. Yet, despite being enveloped by this same Divine Might, Shi Feng remained seated on the sofa nonchalantly, his behavior making it seem as if the Divine Might in the room did not exist at all. Oh, right, I forgot that the Divine Might in this room hasn't fully dissipated yet. Shi Feng was a little surprised when he saw the two people collapsed on the ground before him. Then, he quickly snapped out of his daze and apologized, "Sorry. I was handling something just now. I think it'll be a while longer before this Divine Might disappears completely." It was indeed tough for players to resist Divine Might before reaching Tier 5 or higher. Not to mention, the Divine Might the mana protection crystals radiated belonged to that of ancient gods. It was also because of this reason that unless one could resist an ancient god's Divine Might, one couldn't even extract the ancient god's blood stored inside mana protection crystals. Meanwhile, there existed mental techniques for players in God's domain to resist things such as Divine Might. Only, such mental techniques weren't commonly seen in God's domain. However, once this God's domain gained access to the greater God's domain, learning such mental techniques would become a basic requirement. He was handling something? Galaxy Past suddenly felt his mind freezing. He couldn't even begin to imagine what item Shi Feng was handling to fill this room with such frightening Divine Might. However, after some time had passed, the Divine Might in the room had gradually disappeared, just like Shi Feng said it would. Meanwhile, Hidden Soul had also stood up, her eyes filled with fighting spirit and wariness as she looked at Shi Feng. "Hidden Soul, stop messing around." Galaxy Past, who was still stuck on the ground, shouted hurriedly when he noticed Hidden Soul's expression. "Hidden Soul? Sin of pride." Shi Feng was a little surprised when he looked at the woman standing before him. He was well acquainted with Hidden Soul during his previous life. He had even teamed up with the other party for an expedition before. However, it was precisely because of his familiarity with Hidden Soul that he found it hard to believe that the cloaked woman before him was the same Hidden Soul he knew of. Although Hidden Soul's impressive body remained the same, the aura she currently radiated felt completely different. During his previous life, the Hidden Soul he knew of was an outstanding woman with individual strength so strong that she could fight Divine Heart Carbet, one of Demon's Gate's 9 great experts, to a standstill. Yet, now, the current Hidden Soul felt like a crazed, hungry wolf, her body radiating a cold and violent aura. "That's right. I'm the former Sin of Pride, Hidden Soul." Hidden Soul did not refute Shi Feng's words. However, when she mentioned the words Sin of Pride, a hint of bitterness briefly appeared on her face. Then, she quickly reverted to her normal state, a hint of fear subconsciously appearing in her eyes. "I was skeptical when Galaxy Past told me you were powerful before. After all, resisting a dragon's attack only proves that your attacks are strong. It is an entirely different matter for combat standards." Unlike Galaxy Past, who had only come across Divine Might radiated by items belonging to gods, she had fought actual Tier 6 gods before. So, she knew what a Tier 6 god's Divine Might felt like. Hence, she knew that the Divine Might she just experienced didn't come from a Tier 6 god, but a much more ancient and powerful being instead. Faced with such a powerful divine might, even a half-step tier 6 god-ranked expert like herself was rendered powerless. Yet, Shi Feng had behaved nonchalantly while subjected to this same divine might. If she hadn't personally witnessed this scene for herself, she wouldn't have believed it. Now that you've seen me in person, what do you think of my combat standard? Shi Feng asked with a smile. You are very strong. Hidden Soul readily admitted. At the very least, your combat standard ranks within the top 10 of the people I know. Top 10. Shi Feng wasn't particularly surprised by Hidden Soul's appraisal. Then, he asked, so, may I know the purpose of your visit? To join Zero Wing. Honestly, I've been on the fence on this matter originally, which is why I decided to come here in person to see if Zero Wing can help me. But after seeing you, I think the likelihood of that happening is low, Hidden Soul bluntly stated. I've seen several experts of your caliber in other gods' domains, but none of the powers backing them can help me reach tier 6. The strength of an expert could reflect the foundation of the power they belonged to. This was also why she wanted to test Shi Feng by launching a sneak attack on him. However, while Shi Feng had displayed extraordinary concentration standard and willpower, his combat standard wasn't any better than the monsters she had come across. At most, he was on par with them. So, does this mean you don't plan on joining Zero Wing? Shi Feng asked as he looked at Hidden Soul. That's right. Hidden Soul nodded. Upon hearing Hidden Soul's response, Galaxy Past, still stuck lying on the floor, immediately grew nervous. If Hidden Soul refused to join Zero Wing, it'd be tough for him to find another domain realm expert. After all, he couldn't randomly invite any domain realm expert he knew since he needed to take the Star Alliance's benefit into account. In Hidden Soul's case, she could already be considered an independent player. Even if she joined Zero Wing, it wouldn't disadvantage the Star Alliance in any way. However, just when Hidden Soul was about to leave, Shi Feng suddenly smiled and said, if you were to ask for anything else in this god's domain, Zero Wing might have trouble fulfilling your request. However, if your request is only to reach tier 6, Zero Wing can help you with that. Is what you say true? Hidden Soul couldn't help but turn to Shi Feng, her eyes burning with passion. Honestly, she was already in despair over trying to reach tier 6. Otherwise, she wouldn't have come to the miniature ancient world seeking an opportunity. Of course. While scrutinizing Hidden Soul's expression, Shi Feng said, there are two main conditions players need to fulfill if they wish to reach tier 6. The first condition is to have sufficient control and understanding over mana. The second condition is to have concentration at the tier 6 standard. You have clearly fulfilled the first condition already, so the reason why you've failed to reach tier 6 thus far is because of your lacking concentration. Meanwhile, the reason why your concentration has failed to reach the tier 6 standard is also simple. A strong body requires a strong mind. Likewise, a strong mind requires a strong body. I can see that your mana body is at the peak gold standard, and its completion rate is also very high. Normally, you should have long since reached tier 6. Yet, the fact that you haven't reached it shows that your mental state is incredibly unstable, so you need an even stronger body to compensate for it. What you say is true. It is also the reason why I came to the miniature ancient world. Hidden Soul was not at all fazed by Shi Feng's words. After all, these were all things she had long since known about. I've already tried challenging the Colosseum, but my limit is the peak gold standard. My completion rate is also at 100%. I can't make any further progress unless I can obtain a god legacy. However, the rarity of god legacies goes without saying. Even if someone manages to obtain one, there is no way they will sell it to me. Does Zero Wing have god legacies available? God legacies? Hearing Hidden Soul's question, Shi Feng thought of a few god legacies that should be undiscovered yet as of now. Then, he shook his head and said, we do have a few, but as you've said, they are incredibly valuable. They are not things an outer member should think of obtaining. Zero Wing has God legacies? Galaxy Past couldn't help but lift his head and look at Shi Feng upon hearing Shi Feng's words. If Zero Wing had God legacies available for exchange, then Zero Wing's strength was far more frightening than he initially thought. They're available for exchange. At this moment, even Hidden Soul was a little stunned. She could tell that Shi Feng wasn't boasting or lying through his tone and facial expression. In that case, how strong must a guild be to have the leeway to offer God legacies for exchange? You shouldn't go thinking about those things right now, Shi Feng said, chuckling when he noticed Hidden Soul's fiery gaze. I've already said that they're not things an outer member can obtain. You can only use other methods if you wish to reach Tier 6. Other methods? Hidden Soul grew curious. That's right. While a God legacy is indeed your best option, it isn't irreplaceable, Shi Feng said, smiling. Then, he took out a strand of Ancient God's blood from his bag and said, Ancient God's blood, an item that can push your mana body to the next level.